Yeah, thanks, Mary.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. On behalf of the NYU Meyers Alumni Association, I would like to welcome you to the first Meyers Marvels event. I'm Mary Gallagher, President of the Alumni Association. NYU Rory Meyers College of Nursing is committed to producing lifelong learners who will excel in their nursing careers and be recognized as leaders who keep patient-centered care and the health of society at the forefront of their values. Meyers graduates hold positions of leadership in the profession, practicing diverse clinical, academic, and administrative settings. The Meyers Marvel series will shine a light on some of our most prominent alumni that have influenced the profession of nursing. Tonight, we are thrilled to speak with Claire Fagin. Dr. Fagin has been a trailblazer throughout her nursing career. Her groundbreaking research and innovative approach to education has created an amazing legacy. Tonight, we will have this opportunity to learn how she started her career in nursing, how she turned her research into policy, and how her career evolved through the decades. This event will be moderated by Madeline Nagel. Dr. Nagel is a professor emerita at NYU Meyers College of Nursing. She is nationally and internationally known for program development, publications, and implementation of policy in addiction and psychiatric nursing, with a focus on older adults. Let the festivity begin.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Madeline Nagel, as Marianne pointed out, and so pleased to be here tonight to interview my mentor and dear friend, Claire Fagin. It's also wonderful to recognize so many names in the attendees, among the attendees, whom Claire and I have known and worked with over the years. So we hope to bring you some insights from Claire's long and very productive career. We're going to start at the beginning, which is always a good place to start. And one of the things Claire and I talked a little bit about was how you got interested in nursing to begin with, what really inspired you and, as it were, pulled you over the door frame.
Shall I start?
Yes.
I'll speak fast, people, because I know we only have a half hour for this part. But I don't know how I got into, I do know how I got into nursing, but I never had a dream of being a nurse when I was a kid. I was supposed to be a physician following my aunt, who was a very, very well-known dermatologist. I had no interest in it from early on. So about, I must have been in high school or junior high, I was walking down Andrews Avenue in the Bronx, and I ran into a teacher I'd had in second grade. And she said to me, "Oh, Claire, it's so good to see you. Are you still going to be a doctor?" I said, "Shh, shh, my parents may hear you." It was on the same street we lived that she asked me that question. I said, "No, I never want to be a doctor. I don't want to be one now. So forget it. But don't mention it at all. Please, it's a secret." And that was it. I never wanted to be a physician. I didn't want to be a physician when I was a nurse. I didn't want to be a physician. Now I have no regrets, period. It was not me. Okay. So what happened was I didn't know what I wanted to. So I started Hunter College with a friend of mine. And the two of us were very miserable for various reasons, which I can go into later if we have the time. But it was a wonderful school, but it got us very nervous, very nervous. It was very crowded, very full and brilliant students. And we'd go into a class like in French 1, they all spoke French already. Go into a class in calculus, they all knew calculus. So wherever we went, they all knew more than we did. It was very frustrating. So we decided we were going to take dance classes at Don Pelini Dance Studios. Now, meanwhile, World War II was ending, and we had wanted to serve. Serve was a big thing. We wanted to serve, but we were too young. So at any rate, we walk out of Don Pelini Dance Studio on Lexington Avenue in New York, and we pass a sign in the next building that says, New York City Nursing Council for War Service. Well, that appealed to us, war service. So we went up the stairs, and I think it's called a taxpayer when you have one story over stores. And we went in, and there was a woman there. Her name is Dorothy Wheeler. We didn't know her. We didn't know who she was. She never told us who she was, actually, except for her name. And she started interviewing us. Well, she told us, "Oh my God, you must not look at a hospital school. No way." We were thinking of going to Mount Sinai or someplace like that. Cornell, which had to start in a different way. No, that's the wave of the future is baccalaureate education. You cannot go to a hospital school. Okay. Do you have any idea where you want to go? So me, brilliant, says the University of Alabama. She looked at me like I was a lunatic. And she said, tell me about your parents. Do they have enough money to send you back and forth to Alabama? I said, no, I have to pay my own way. She said, I don't think Alabama is a place for you. You're never going to see your parents. So at any rate, she said there are 3 colleges for you to look at. One is Skidmore, one is Adelphi, and one is Wagner College, a new program. She said, I don't think you're going to be happy at Skidmore. However, you can look at it anyway and look at the other 2. So we took her seriously. We didn't look at Skidmore, but we went to Adelphi. And believe it or not, we met Mildred Montag, who at that point did not have a doctorate. Associate degrees were not even in her dreams. In fact, they were never in her dreams. If you want to know the truth, they were in the dreams of her leader at Teachers College. And so we interviewed her, but she was very frightening. We were very shy little creatures, big creatures. I was pretty tall, 5'8½", but very shy. So that scared us. So then we met Dean Burr. Now, Dean Burr from Wagner was teaching at Hunter extension courses for RNs. So we could see her at Hunter where she interviewed us. She was probably 40, but she felt like a grandmother to us. And she was bosomy and wonderful and warm and terrific. And she was just what I needed. And I think my friend Rhoda felt the same way. So we went to Wagner. We never bothered to look at the other place. Okay. Why nursing? Why nursing is a lot of things. One, first of all, I was in the U.S. Cadet Corps. I'm going to show you a picture.
I
Anybody-
believe that picture. It's
Am I in
great.
the right place? Okay, so I was in a uniform, and that was very attractive because on the billboards all over New York, there were U.S. cadet nurses trying to recruit into nursing programs. They were not service. It would look like service. And they're wearing these beautiful uniforms with TAMs, beret hats, and so forth. And we were getting $30 a month for the first 3 years and $60 a month for the last 6 months. It was very wealthy. We were very wealthy for that era. You have to remember the era, very wealthy. And we had a lot of money from that.
Now, Claire, when we talked about this, because we did discuss this, one of the things that I remember that you took from that experience was the notion of ad hoc mentoring. And I
Yes,
want
right.
you to mention that because we do
Okay.
want to move on to hearing about psychiatric nursing. But tell us a little bit about
Just a
where
minute.
you saw that. Yeah.
Here's Dorothy Wheeler. We didn't know her from a hole in the wall. Later, she became the best paid nurse in the US, written up by the New York Times as the head of the VA nursing service. Never saw her again, never heard from her, nothing. However, the advice she gave us was so fabulous that it gave me a whole thing in my head that I use later. And I have written about it in my articles, which is ad hoc mentoring. In other words, you can meet somebody briefly, but if you get the right advice that hits you right, it's probably as valuable as long-term mentoring with a lot of other people. So it isn't that it's better necessarily, but don't ever reject good advice from bright people. And that's what we had. The best advice. Can you imagine if I'd gone to Alabama, was stuck there and couldn't get home ever because I didn't have the money? I mean, that would have been ludicrous. She was totally right. Hit it on the head. She told us the way it was. She told us, I mean, she didn't know us from a hole in the wall, but she caught on to who we were and what we needed. And she told it to us and we listened. And I listened for all my life to Dorothy Wheeler because of that. It's a major, major stepping stone.
But
That's
it's
enough.
a major stepping stone that we hope our younger people in the profession will continue.
You have to
Honor.
actually listen. Don't think anybody's wasting words on you. If somebody like that is using words, they're not wasting them. You got to listen and not be bored and not be feeling this is trivial and not be feeling this is an old lady telling. She wasn't an old lady anyway, but we listened. I don't know why we were so naive that we listened. We listened and followed. Because
So the
every
next little
said-
piece you told me, the next piece you told me about listening was really how you got psychiatric nursing.
Well,
Because
that was
you
because I
listened.
was already in nursing and I loved it and I loved my school and I loved every course I ever took and I loved every area. I could have been an OR nurse for that matter, which I thought I would never be because I thought I'd faint at the sight of blood. But at any rate, as psychiatric nurses who are Jewish generally do, but that's a joke. That's like Jewish psychiatrists. It's a big joke. That was a joke at the time. At any rate, I don't want to go into that. But at any rate, we were affiliates in every place we went because we didn't have a hospital at Wagner. So we were in 2 places, 2 hospitals for the general med surge. And then we're at Creedmoor State Hospital for psychiatry. And we're in Seaview Hospital for pediatrics and also tuberculosis, don't ask. At any rate, so I was at Creedmoor, and I also spent my senior cadet period, the 6 months I mentioned earlier, at Creedmoor. I loved it. It hit me in all the right places. I knew it was for me. I loved my patients. The patients loved me. I don't know if they loved me, but most of them did. I have memories to this day of a patient sitting there singing songs, sitting at the table, so blue, singing the most beautiful songs. And my heart goes out to her even now. But that's what happened. It hit my heart and it hit my service feeling. It just was perfect. It was a match.
So jump us over to how that took you to the NIH Clinical Research Center,
Wait, that's
where you got interested
But I
in.
was already, remember I had a master's already, but then this was a baccalaureate. Then I worked for a year at Seaview because I had to get my baccalaureate at Wagner, and the Cadet Corps only paid for the first 3 years. Then you went a year and got your baccalaureate. Okay. So I worked at a tuberculosis hospital with very sick children separated from families. Now, did I think about it then? Did I intellectualize? No. All I knew was I knew what I felt, and I knew what was wrong. I knew that they should not be separated to that extent from families. There were little tots of 2.5 years old, 3 years old who had tuberculosis and were totally separated and put in this terribly big hospital. Grotesque. I mean, we were all good, but it was grotesque just the same, the experience. So that hit me very hard in the head. So then I transferred from there to Bellevue, which was psychiatric nursing. I went to a psych unit, adolescent psych, which I adored also. I mean, it sounds crazy to say I loved all this, but there's not a job I had that I didn't love. I loved that job at Bellevue. However, what happened at Bellevue was a woman came back from Teachers College, and she had just gotten a master's with Hildegard Peplow. It was the first program that Hilda ran. And her name is Gertrude Stokes. She was very active in community psychiatry following this, putting out patients out of hospitals. And she talked differently from me. I was very recognized as a nurse at Bellevue. The physicians were very respectful of me. The senior physicians particularly were respectful of me, included me on every meeting, wanted to know my opinion. But somehow I didn't talk like Gertrude. Gertrude spoke like an intellectual. She didn't say, I feel, I think, this is the way I think about it. My feelings are such and such. The patient, she never talked like that. She always talked third person or about the literature. And then she would bring herself in. She wouldn't start with I feel. And I always started with I feel. When the physician in charge would look at me and say, Claire, what do you think? I would say, I feel something. I was good. I had wonderful intuition, but that's not the way you handle a meeting. You don't handle a meeting with intuition. And I learned that the hard way because I listened to her. And I knew when I listened to her, that's the way I want to be. So I left Bellevue, went to Teachers College, worked with Hildegard Peplow, got my master's. Then,
Okay, let's hang you that for just a minute, because I want to really move to that link between.
I'm going to link. I'm going to clinical center.
And then clinical center. Yeah.
Okay. So then I got a job that they handed me. Hildegard and her pal, Teresa Morgan, and other people handed me this job at the National League for Nursing Education, which was called then in those days. And I was a sort of researcher consultant. I was called that. I was all of 24, got a job as a consultant. I passed through Pittsburgh and met Dorothy Marinas for the first time. Dorothy Marinas says, you will never do it this job. You're too young to be a consultant. You cannot be a consultant. She scared the hell out of me. However, I decided I was going to do the job anyway, which I did, but I had wonderful, wonderful support. At the time, I had finished my master's, remember, and I met in my master's program Gwen Tudor, very, very prominent person in psychiatric nursing eventually. She was being groomed to go to NIH to head the psychiatric nursing division of the new clinical center, which had not yet been opened in Bethesda. And she asked me if I would come to be her assistant chief. And so I finished my 1-year contract with the National League for Nursing Education. I went there to be her associate. I was married. I got married in February of that same year, and we were living in the Washington area. There, everybody who was anybody passed through. It was a brand new NIH hospital, brand new, cancer, psychiatry, anything you name, family therapy, anything you name was there at the beginning of this period. And everybody in the world passed through, including Dorothy Marinas, by the way, who said to me, if you ever come back to New York, call me because I need you at NYU. And also, this is more formative, James Robertson, who had just done a movie called A 2-Year-Old Goes to Hospital. And he showed it at NIH to everybody. It was so moving that it just penetrated my whole body, because it was about, again, a young child separated from parents in hospital, sick, not a TB, regular acute care hospital where the child was separated. It's a magnificent film. He worked with James Bowlby, who was John Bowlby, excuse me, very, very prominent person in psychiatry in England. Wonderful man, wonderful film, and everybody came through NIH, everybody. You want to meet somebody, just be there. And everybody in psychiatry will come through. Anybody you ever heard of will come through. It's extraordinary. So at any rate, I got very taken by the separation theme because it was part of my life, actually, my own life, personal life.
Mhm.
And it was just very taken with the whole idea of separation. It was not in my head as a subject at all, but just taken in an emotional way. Okay, we did come back to New York, and I tried to get a job in clinic. I had no interest in being an educator, I should tell you that. I tried to get a clinical position at the Bloomingdale division of Cornell, which was in the Westchester County, and it was a psychiatric hospital, private. I will never forget the words that this woman used, the director of nursing. She said, "My dear, you cannot work with our patients. You have only worked in the public sector. You will not know how to treat our patients." That was it. I had a master's degree. That was it. That's what she told me. Okay. So then I tried the VA. They had no place for me either. If I wanted to be an aide, I could have been an aide with my master's degree. So circumstances forced me to call Dorothy, which I did. And of course, I got a job immediately with Dorothy. And that's where I stayed from 19 whatever to 19 whatever. You know, Madeline, because you know we were fine.
Yeah, it was somewhere in the late 60s. So when we met, you were heading the child
56. I
adolescent-
went to NYU in 56.
Right. But
And
you had finished your dissertation around 64.
right,
So
finished.
we
Yes,
met when I was a student there.
and what happened was this: I didn't want a doctorate, I didn't want to be an academic, I didn't want any of those things, but I had to do it because I had to take at least a course to show I was serious, because Martha wouldn't have it any other way. Martha Rogers, you had to be working on a doctorate. So I took group dynamics, which was fine, and I worked with Dorothy. We started the program, new program in psychiatric nursing, and then I stopped working because I adopted my first son. And when I adopted him, I was home for 2 years in Manhattan, going to the park every day with him. That was decent. And I would not see any of my friend mothers. The mothers were there and had been there this summer. They were all gone. So and I'd say to them, oops, I would say to the nanny, oh, sorry. Oh my God.
So while that interrupts us, because I think that's the phone, I want to jump that over, really.
How do I do this?
2 points, but I want to make 2 points about that. One was how passionately you felt. Where are you, Claire? Okay, let's see. So I think Claire answered the phone and separated herself off of the
Yes.
iPad.
Mhm.
So let's see if she can get back on. But one of the points that she made, which I think is an excellent one that she and I discussed, was how much she was touched by the rooming in experience because of her own personal experience, and the importance of really having that passion about the work and feeling passionate about your dissertation topic, because nobody ever really finishes research unless you do feel passionate. So Claire, I was just sort of taking us over from you completing the dissertation in rooming in and how that took you forward in terms of your final move to, or the next move, which was moving on to Lehman and
No,
innovate.
that was much later though, Madeline, because first of all, I had to select this topic for my dissertation.
Yep.
And I realized it had to be separation.
Right.
And I did a study, came out good, although it's challenged by orals
Right.
and by my so-called mentor, very funny. And in fact, I had a wonderful, wonderful other faculty member who looked at her like she was some lunatic because she was supposedly my chairman and was challenging me the whole way that, oh, don't even ask. It was not a pleasant experience. So anyway, I finished that in 64, and then we published it and came out later. And at that point, Dan Griffiths was the dean of the School of Education at NYU. He read it. He called me up and he said, Claire, would you mind if I put my public relations people on this? I had a child in the hospital. I feel so strongly about what you've written. So he put his public relations people on it. I knew nothing about PR, nothing. Everything I learned in each of these jobs, I knew nothing about beforehand. I just learned on the job and then I used it if I thought it was good, which I did with PR forever. Anyway, he put the PR people on it. They had me on everything. New York shows, Today's Show, published in the New York Times, etc. And I then did another study, which I didn't finish until I went to Penn, and Lehman, excuse me, and about the results of this study, the results of my research, which were staggering, staggering. And if you look at Bowlby today, which I have in my house, they will tell you CM Fagin, that's me.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then I started my own master's program in psychiatry, where I met you, Madeline, and various other wonderful people who became my friends for life. You especially, Madeline. I don't think anyone else became my friend for life out of your program, but colleagues. And at any rate, and then I started to feel I had to leave NYU. Why? Because Martha Rogers was a wonderful leader, but she wanted to get rid of all the specialty programs. So the public health person left, the rehab person left, and I left. And the rehab person went to Adelphi as dean. She recommended me for Lehman, which is a brand new program. And I went for my interview and I went there. But
So I'm watching the time and I want you to jump over to that Lehman program because I think that's an example of the skills of collaboration and innovation that you took forward. When you started that program at Lehman, it really laid the groundwork for the patterns that followed later at Penn.
I agree. And the thing about Lehman was that it was connected with Montefiore, and they worked with me on developing this program. Absolutely. But I also had in my head, Loretta Ford was very famous already for her work with master's students and nurse practitioners. But I had in my head that we could introduce a lot of this at the undergraduate level, not make nurse practitioners, but make primary care people and teach primary care at the undergraduate level. Now, face it, my faculty had to be prepared first because they didn't know anything about it either. They didn't know how to examine people. They didn't use all the instruments that we now use and think are part of our career. They weren't at that time. And so they were fantastic. Anybody who came to work at Lehman knew that was what he or she had to do.
Yes, we learned it by experimenting on our friends and spouses. And
also from physicians on the units. I mean, this is a fabulous opportunity at Montefiore because the head of Montefiore wants us to cooperate. This chief guy who walked around with the keys wants to cooperate. They wanted me to support their PA program, which I wouldn't do, and tried to kill that with my faculty, but that didn't work. that continued. However,
so I wanted you to talk about some of your pearls of wisdom that you mentioned to me on Sunday, because I think those are very important and we're going to be closed out of our time. And you had some great lines there, if you recall. And if you take a look at your cheat sheet, you'll see that there were some wonderful takeaways that you said you really wanted to share with our listeners.
I gotta find them.
That's all right. Remember, but you've already mentioned.
I'll tell you why I have to remind me, because my vision is very, very poor. We're going to see all my negatives here. But anyway, I want to tell you something else about Lehman in a minute. I went to Lehman, and the liberal arts faculty, some of them were very insulting about nursing. They'd never had nursing. This was called Hunter Uptown at one time, and now it became a private college. I'm not a private, but a separate college. They were very insulting. They were very insulting about nursing. They said bad things about nursing. But I had a lot of support. I had support from certain people. I remember their names to this day, who would stand up. I didn't have to say a word. They would stand up at faculty meetings and support us, support what we were doing. 1. 2, I had the most incredible faculty, all of whom came committed to an idea, committed to a new curriculum, committed to working to make it work. And that's what they did. The faculty were unbelievable. We still love them all. Madeline, you know that. We all love them all. Such incredible people. And then I started to feel, as I was there a long time, thinking I would never leave, that I want to know if I could leave. I want to know, knew I became a big fish in a little pond. And I wanted to know if I could be a big fish in a big pond, because I never had to contend with medicine. We didn't have a medical school. We didn't have anything that I would have to contend with physicians. We didn't own our hospital, none of that. I wanted to know if I could do the same at a university that had a medical school and a hospital. I was determined to do that because I just didn't know if I could make it. I had been big fish in little ponds before, and I didn't want to stay there as a big fish in a little pond, although it was
So
wild.
one of the things you mentioned as one of your pearls is that very point you're making, which was that you saw yourself in a situation that was not challenging, and you took the risk to get into a situation that was challenging.
I was very challenged at Lehman. I loved Lehman. I loved the people. They loved me. It was a love affair. I loved my faculty. I didn't want anyone to come and even disturb my faculty. So what happened was I started opening my eyes. Sam was ready to move because he was a consultant at this time and he could go anywhere in the country, but we had to be someplace where we could sail. So because we had a boat and so forth. So there were 2 jobs open. One was UCSF and one was University of Pennsylvania. I was not interested in Penn at that time, but I was interested in UCSF. Why? Because I love San Francisco. Not a good reason. So off I went to UCSF for my interview. And I had a feeling it was not for me because they wanted to get rid of their undergraduate program, and I believe in undergraduate education. But I went to the search committee. I loved the chancellor loved me, by the way, loved, because he was a sailor also. And he kept pulling out charts and telling us where we were going to sail. Anyway, went to the search committee. On the end of the search committee desk, I didn't know this woman was not a tenured faculty member, but she wasn't, as chairman of the search committee. And she said to me like this: why would a New Yorker like you want to come here? So I did the same thing. I said, you know what? I'm wondering that myself. Well, of course they laughed. She didn't. And that was the end of my conference. That night I called Sam from the dean's office, which was empty. And I said, Sam, they hate me and I hate them. They offer me the job, we're coming. Okay, he said. So they didn't offer me the job. They gave it to Greta Stiles. So I came back to Lehman, very happy. I came back to Lehman. Well, I knew why she got the job. I'm not going to go into it now, but at any rate.
You want to hear some of it?
She didn't want the undergraduate program. She had already tried to get rid of an undergraduate program at Wayne State. They voted against her. So she came there, got rid of the undergraduate program. The faculty was happy that was that.
Right. But
Anyway, so
switch over because our time is fleeting.
how much time do I have left?
We have about 5 minutes left and we're
Okay, I'll do it fast. I'll just tell about Penn. So Penn was nudging me and nudging me and nudging me, and I was not about to go to Penn. No way. First of all, it didn't have a good sailing place, and it wasn't really known. I mean, Penn was not famous. So I didn't want to go there. However, they called me finally and said, well, if you don't come to us, we're coming to you. This was the dean of the medical school and the vice president for health affairs. I said, you are not coming to me. I have a jewel here. I'm not coming, I'm not allowing you to come in. You'll ruin my faculty. So I decided I better go as a consultant, which I did. They fell in love with me. I fell in love with them. And that's the end of the story. End of story. We did everything we wanted to do. We did it in 1 year instead of 5 years. We had a new doctoral program, a new research center, the first private research center in the country in nursing. And we had wonderful faculty, just as good as anywhere, and brought some of them from Lehman, not too many. And because I was sworn to the president, I wouldn't. But Penn gave me everything I needed. It showed me I could be a big fish in a big pond. I became president of Penn, as you know, interim, but even so, the medical school reported to me, which the chairman of the board of directors of Penn was so thrilled about. He loved their squirming, as he keeps saying to this day. that they were reporting to a nurse. It was fun. I loved it, loved it, loved it. About how many problems I had at Penn every minute.
Okay, but you did a few things that really relate to what you'd mentioned to me. And one of those very important one was a piece of advice you wanted to give our younger friends and alumni who are listening. When that's about raising your voice and speaking up and using the knowledge, which as you said, you learned from Gertrude Stokes, speaking from a knowledgeable place, but raising your voice.
Always. I did from the very beginning. I was a very shy creature. But the thing about nursing is you had so much to talk about. I mean, you couldn't sit by and let things happen without talking about them. You had patients who were needy and you had reasons for being their advocate. You had to speak about it. You couldn't just sit by and say nothing. And so I was always, I've been described as fearless, and I'm not fearless. I'm always afraid, but I speak up. I believe in using your voice. And that's what I say to nurses today. Use your voice. We're in a terrible situation right now. We have the whole hospital community in disaster period. It's not only us, it's physicians crying, losing their will to do their jobs, leaving medicine. And the same with nursing. We're seeing this happen. Why? Because the acute care system is a damaging system to employees. They don't know how to treat clinicians. They don't know how to plan for clinical work. Speak up, damn it. I'm not saying you have to strike the Minnesota, although I support them completely right now in this time. I'm not saying you have to do that, but you have to speak up and you have to let people know what you think, and you have to make sure you're talking in groups. You can't be a lone wolf. You have to get people with you. And I think I did that. I think I got people with me. And I'm still just trying to do it. I'm still trying to do it. We have major issues today. I'm still trying to work on it, but I'm doing it poorly because I'm using Twitter and I have a lot of followers, not as many as a lot of other people, but I have followers.
You
And
do. And
I-
you always do what you're telling us to do, which is to keep
Always.
a place of knowledge, not just
Number,
opinion.
I'm going to say a few things. I said before, don't use I. We're not talking about I, we're talking about the patient. Even when we talk this erroneously about the nursing shortage, we're talking about the nursing care shortage. We're not talking about the nurse shortage. There are nurses who are leaving nursing today because they're so miserable. That should not be happening. But it's happening because the system is so dreadful and so unappreciative of what nurses do, unless they're angels. You know, during the angel period, oh, again, what is going on here?
Well, my dear, I want us to take a few minutes. I think that's something with your phone, but I want us to take a few minutes and see if you can respond to some questions, if you're still there. Okay. So what has happened is that I think Claire's phone rang and that threw her off of however she was using the computer. So if she can get back on, I'm wondering, Mary, if we want to ask people if they have some questions.
Definitely. Maybe they can type them in the chat box and then you can ask her so that it's
Great.
one
Yeah,
person
I'm gonna look
communicating.
now. Right.
Right.
And so there are some, I don't see any
Not
now.
yet, but anybody, if you'd like a question, just write it in the chat box and Madeline can take it from there. And
okay,
Claire is
so
back.
Claire? Are you back on, Claire? So you have to unmute yourself.
What is this? Unmute, damn it.
Hey, you're there. All right.
Okay, I was in the middle of saying, don't use I if you can help it.
Right.
Because not I was speaking of, you can use we occasionally, but don't use I. I is not a good pronoun. You want to talk about the patient. That's where we start. We start with the patient's needs, not with my needs, not with your needs, the patient's needs. And that's where we start. And that's what we mean when we say I, because we say, I think the patient needs. No, we know the patient needs. We talk about patient needs. So that's one, don't use I. Two, raise your voice whenever you can. Always raise your voice. Recognize the value in what you have to say and recognize that it needs you. It needs you to raise your voice, the system today. So protect your interests and align your goals with the patients. And I think that's simple for us, really. So the profession's goals and the patient's goals have to be the same here, because we cannot give high quality nursing care unless we value ourselves too. So it comes together. And I think the big thing is, again, raise your voice. Yes, I'm finished. I'll say anything anybody wants me to say.
Thank you, my dear. And there's at least one question here. Let me just get it, pull it up for us. Do you see, and this is from Teddy Sirota. So nice to hear from Teddy. She is a psych program graduate alum. Do you see APRNs taking over all of primary patient care?
I think this will happen if the medical association allows it. The thing that's so bizarre about the situation is that they don't want to do it. They really, if you read all the literature, they do not want to do it. But they're unwilling, as you know, to have us expand our role. I think it's time now. Yes, I think this is really a big time for nursing practitioners, nurse practitioners. I think we have a whole big area to fill. I think nurses are happy doing the job. I think physicians are happy having them under them, which is not what we're looking for. But I think this is an area we have to work on politically and as hard as we can, and we're winning in many circumstances. So yes, indeed. Did I answer your question, Madeline?
That's great. And I hope that answered Teddy's question. I'm just going to comment on Harriet Feldman's observation because I think it's shared by all of us. And that is, we could all listen to you for hours. And it's just unfortunate that we
Not
have
really. I
the
don't think.
short time that we have. So here's one from Dr. Mary Elaine Southard to everyone. Claire, met you in my master's program at Penn in 1984. You continue to inspire me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy.
Other
I'm working hard,
comments? Questions?
kiddos. And here's another. Oh, look at that. Good. It's a joy to be with you too.
So nice from Teddy. Yes.
Yes.
So Marianne, how are we doing with our time? Looks like we have a little bit of time left. I wonder if we could take one more question.
We haven't had any.
Yeah,
Yes,
we had a couple.
Big. Okay. Here we go.
Okay.
Yes, I love the reframing too.
So Adilma Yearwood, who is a dear and very well-known psychiatric nurse, author, a member of our psychiatric nursing expert panel, says that she loves the way you reframed the nursing care shortage. You really went to the heart of it, which is that it's a shortage of quality nursing care. It's
Okay.
not a shortage of numbers of people.
That's right. We know we have enough nurses bodies, but the nurses' bodies are being abused like I've never seen before in the hospital system. Not all of them. We have wonderful, wonderful hospitals in this country. We can probably identify most of them, but by and large, this is a very destructive period for nurses. And all you have to do is read about it and you know it. And I read something called Becker's Hospital Review every day of the week. And you get the news from there. It's not their news, it's what they find in magazines.
One more question. What research is missing in the conversation about the so-called nursing shortage? What research is missing?
What
What
I
do we
missed
need
the
to
last
know
part.
more about? What research is missing in this so-called conversation about the nursing shortage?
What's missing is what I said. They talk about there's a shortage of nurses. There is not a shortage of nurses. Read Linda Aiken's research. It's opinion versus research. I mean, I don't know how long we're going to do this. We're going to talk about opinion versus research and say opinion is right, research is wrong. That's what we've been doing here. Because, I mean, we know from the literature, there is not a nurse shortage. There's a nursing care shortage. We know that from literature. And if we're not clear about it, we're not conveying it right. And if we're clear, it's a very different picture. If you go in with a nursing shortage, you're killing yourself before you start, because then the hospital can be free, fine. There's a nursing shortage, that's why it's so lousy. Wrong. It's a shortage of care about what nurses do that makes it so lousy, not because it's a shortage of people. Anyway.
Thank you. So Renee Sanchez just wants us to say thanks to you for your advice and wisdom. It's so powerful that you remind us to get off of the I and stay focused on the patient.
Patient.
WHO
All
says
about money.
patient-centered care, person-centered care. I just want to comment a little bit on your comment about nurses taking care of themselves, because as you know, ANA and the Academy has had big initiatives since COVID and are continuing on those to work on the importance of self-care and nurse well-being. And we are seeing now many publications out of many groups, including the Academy of Nursing, about the importance of mental health and holistic health for nurses and teaching nurses how to care for themselves.
Absolutely. If you don't care for yourself, you can't care for anyone else.
That's right. That's right.
And Madeline, we can keep going for a while.
Oh, great. Okay. So Monifa is just commented, Monifa Anderson, who is the past president of the Alumni Association. Claire, one of the highlights of my time at NYU as former president of the Alum Association was meeting and speaking with you. You are amazing and an inspirational leader.
Thank you.
What words of wisdom you have for nurses? What words, additional words of
My
wisdom?
words of wisdom are simple. If you don't love this field, don't do it, because it's hard. I think all of us who are in nursing, I've come to believe this in my old age, all of us feel a calling, because otherwise, why would we have stayed in this field so many years? We're all talented, we're educated, we can do almost anything we want to do, but we stayed in nursing. Why? Because we have a calling. We love serving the patient in an intelligent way, because we're all very, very educated on this goal. And I think knowing that, knowing why you're in nursing, why you care for the patient is crucial. To keep that in your head at all times. I'll start crying in a minute. I feel so strongly about it, I can't tell you. Really, I feel so strongly for myself and what I have said over the years to myself about loving this career. I just love nursing. I love what it does for me and what I can do for other people. And I think if you don't love it, you like it?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say, if you don't love it, it's very hard.
Right. But you also, your parting words to me when I saw you last were, you know, we're different. We talked about why I didn't become a physician, why you didn't become a physician.
Right.
Because nursing is different, and that vocation and that commitment to the patient is different.
Very different. When I took the job as president, I had an interview with the dean of the School of Medicine. And I didn't have an interview. I interviewed him. I said to him, Bill, I said, I just want to tell you something. I will not interfere with anything you do except hurting patients. If I see changes in patient care that are negative, I will call you on it. The rest of it, you have your own, Bill. You have your own job to do, and that's fine. And that's what I meant, and he knew it. I care about patients.
And I think that's a great way to wrap up, Marianne. I think Claire is such a gift to us in the ongoing participation that you make sure you do, whether it's on Twitter or coming to our gatherings or making yourself available or just spending our personal time together, which many people on this call are happy to be participating in. We're so grateful for that.
Most definitely. And Claire, as a pediatric nurse, your research is near and dear to my heart. And
I couldn't agree more. You have to look at me as a pediatric nurse too. I feel that I was pediatric when I was young, and now I'm geriatric. Absolutely. I was really involved in pediatrics.
Yeah, and how we were able to use your research to make significant changes at many hospitals to include parents and families everywhere. So thank you from the heart of a pediatric nurse.
Thank you for your comment. When I got to Penn, the first note I had on my desk was from 4 pediatric nurses at Penn, at the hospital, Children's Hospital, as well as the school, asked me to go to lunch. I was so thrilled because I didn't realize how important it had been to them, but it was. And I was thrilled beyond words, I can tell you.
Yeah. One more little question just popped up, Mary. Do we have time for it?
Sure.
What piece of advice, dear Claire, would you give to novice PhD students? To PhD students just starting out, what piece of advice would you give?
To whom? To whom?
PhD students just starting out?
Well, first of all, get yourself a project that you really can put your arms around. Because if you can't put your arms around your project, it's never going to be something you're going to want to talk about. You're not going to want to sell it if you don't have anything to sell, whether it's research in really even strongly intellectual circles or research circles, not research, clinical circles or whatever it is. You have to love what you're doing and you have to present it in a way that will show what's contributing. If you don't, what's the use, actually?
But when you embrace that project, would you say that you're recommending that PhD students begin building on their original research and expand that?
I wish you'd repeat that because couldn't get it.
Okay, when you say that, are you suggesting that PhD students embrace their project, as you said, and build on that dissertation and its findings to go
If
forward?
you can do it. If you can do it, yes. If you can't, you can't. And many people don't. But I think if you can do something with it, either politically or otherwise, in nursing itself, for the literature, for growth of knowledge and so forth, that's great. If you can do something politically, that's even great. I mean, I don't think you have to pick a particular area you do it in. I think you just have to see to it that you can go further with it if you can. If you're a faculty member in particular, it's very hard as an administrator to do those things. But as a faculty member, that's what your job is, continue your research and to continue refining it, developing it, broadening it, deepening it, etc. And that's what you want to do as a faculty member and get grants.
Excellent.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Fagin and Dr. Nagel and everyone joining us tonight.
It's a
Some
pleasure.
pearls I walked away with were, I love the ad hoc mentoring,
Me
taking
too.
good advice from bright people, that you spoke, and it's woven throughout the whole talk tonight about things that hit your heart and hit your service feeling.
Absolutely.
And then that, of course, then creates the love. And then, of course, and this is how we all practice now with evidence, don't handle meetings with intuition. So those were very three poignant ones for me. And thank you to all our guests who attended tonight. You will be receiving a survey later this evening, and we encourage you to share your feedback about the program. Please join us for the upcoming next Meyers Marvel events. We will be speaking with Alicia Georges on October 12th and Jacqueline Fawcett on November 16th. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And you realize the next two are our people too, because Alicia I hired before I left Lehman. And Jackie, of course, worked at Penn with us. So it's a little family.
Yes.
We are a family, folks. Nursing family. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Claire.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you, folks. I guess I'm supposed to go off now.
Yes, ma'am. Just press the button.
Thank you, honey.
I said, you can stay on for a second. Thank you, Claire. This is Eileen. I think Madeline exited. But
No, I'm here.
thank you so much. Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
That was terrific.
Madeline, you did a great job. You really did.
Wonderful. Incredible.
That is. But, you know, one of the things which is wonderful about working with Claire is not only our long association, but her generosity with acknowledging the people who she really developed. And that was true at Lehman for many of us who were there as faculty with her, and certainly true at Penn. And we're so grateful to you, Claire, for that.
Well, I'm thinking of Eileen. I didn't say anything about Eileen, and I would have liked to because I'm so admiring of her. I think she's so fabulous a dean. I think what she's doing is great. I think I love the way she treats her retiring faculty. I love the way she handled the AAN. I think she's a perfect example of a wonderful leader.
Thank you. And so many times while you were talking today, I was like, oh yeah, Claire taught me that. Oh yeah, Claire taught me that.
Yeah, but I also tell you what I think of you, and I don't know that you always believe me because I do think you're great.
Thank you. Yes, well, it's an honor to hear that from you and to hear all those other wonderful names, Greta Stiles, and so many other people along the road that that we all are a family and we just keep growing in generations together. It's fabulous.
True. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. I mean, I think of when I met Madeline, I think it's so hilarious, Madeline and Judy Haber, both in that
Mhm.
class. So amazing, isn't it? We're such close
It
friends.
is amazing. And I always tell people that when you came to Penn, you gave remarks at a December dinner for those of us who were finishing the baccalaureate in December, as I was being a diploma person to a baccalaureate person. And I was at that dinner and you were introduced, you were starting in the next semester. And I asked you a question as to whether or not you were going to continue to support the education of the diploma grads on to baccalaureate, because Penn under Marinas had a huge program for that. And, you were supportive of the baccalaureate and et cetera. And Joette Clark told me afterwards that you turned to her and said, "Who was that person?"
And here we are still all together, which is amazing. So that
It
not
is
only
amazing.
speaks to the family notion, but speaks to the dedication that has supported us having such gratifying careers, because we all have, everybody in
Yeah,
our,
very much so.
very much so.
Very much.
I wasn't terrified.
Good.
Jane. I could have been terrified, but I wasn't. It was scary, but I wasn't terrified.
Yeah, well, we're not terrified because there's so many of us, it's all how we, cross the Rubicon together. We're all doing it together, and when you least expect it, someone will give you a pat on the back or give you a suggestion or challenge you in a way that makes sense. And that's what I so appreciate about the
thing that
community. You have
challenged
to
me,
be open.
right, was I went to master's students and I told them we were going to give up the master's dissertation. And I had two wonderful people in that room who were challenging me like you wouldn't believe. And one of them was Martha Hill. We remember it to this day because she loved that dissertation at the master's level, but you couldn't do the master's dissertation and also do a PhD. We didn't have
Nope.
a PhD. But that was a very, very heavy duty thing.
Nope.
And I would say that was one of the challenges.
Mhm.
That was a
And also
mistake. I did a master's thesis at the University of Rochester with Maddie Schmidt, which was
All right.
fabulous, and Thelma Wells, but it looks like a PhD dissertation. And
Exactly.
so then I felt like my PhD was a postdoc. So, but it really was, I did multiple regression. It was amazing, but yeah, we didn't need to do that. Thank you for stopping that.
Yes, and that's one example of a lot of the innovative things that you've done, Claire. When we look back on our own journey through nursing, many of the changes came very much from the policies you established at both Lehman and Penn, but also the writing and the observations you made that moved things forward. So you've shaped nursing for so many of us. And I think that is a wonderful, wonderful legacy.
But look at how many of us got our doctors at NYU.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
right. So I've got to go on and meet with my colleagues from Australia. So Eileen, thanks so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Madeline,
you,
for doing
Eileen.
that.
Thank
Good,
you.
good to
Thank
see
you,
you,
Claire.
Kathy and Mary Ann.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you
Thank
so
you, Claire.
much.
Mhm.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Keep in touch.
evening.
Wonderful.
Marianne. That's Mary Ann Roncoli there.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's me.
yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry I
remember-
caused you so much trouble, but I'm
remember
glad I said
Blood
what I
story.
said.
You remember, right?
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Claire.
Wonderful talking to you. Love, 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 love. I can't bear
Love
it.
to you.
Yeah.
I'm
okay,
parting.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye. Parting. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mary Ann. I love that.
Thank you.
You don't tell that story to everybody.
Oh,
You look good, honey. Take
okay,
care.
so do you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.